no one shames you for taking a drug for your diabetes or for your cholesterol. But the minute the thing you take makes you look better and socially you'll get the attention in a room instead of them, all of a sudden that's not fair.
Bringing you a reasoned approach to health and fitness. This is the Phi Life Podcast.
Welcome to the Phi Life Podcast. I'm John Barbin. With me is Brad Pilon, brought to you by the Total T Clinic today. And we're going to talk about GLP-1 receptor agonists. I guess GIP as well. So everyone's heard, I'm sure everyone's heard about this by now. It's semaglutide and tirzepatide, or more, the trade names are Ozempic, and I think it's Mounjaro.
Oh, dude, they're just the weight loss drugs, right?
The weight loss
people
drugs.
are just like those weight loss drugs.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's with that kind of tone in their voice.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of information on these. Let's do this really quickly. I'm not going to get into the physiology and how they work. Exactly how they work. You can find that all over the place. You can read about it. It's a little tedious and a little boring. Super high level. A couple of the main effects, I'm sure, if you've read about this at all, is they can slow down gastric emptying, gives you increases your feeling of satiety and or fullness after eating. They have central effects in the brain. They seemed to have an effect on both your reward center as well as cravings, as well as like food seeking behavior, as well as satiety and hunger. So it's kind of like there's two things probably going on at the brain level. So they make you eat less,
basically?
Yeah, you can feel fuller. You're going to eat less from the hunger thing, but there's also
a craving thing, right?
Craving and reward seeking behavior. So some people are reporting they drink less, they just engage in less like online shopping. There's like weird anecdotal reports that
Amazon's gonna get it banned.
Yeah. It's something to do with a dopamine reward system. There's more going on there than just satiety. There's something to do with the reward center. There's two different parts of the brain. So that's, I think, really new, but also encouraging for how they work. Semaglutide is a single receptor agonist. Tirzepatide binds to two different receptors. The research on tirzepatide for weight loss specifically all just hit and just got approved, I think, very recently, just the last month or two. And this is, again, FDA approval independent of for type 2 diabetes. These have been on
so it was originally a diabetes med, right?
Yeah. GLP-1 agonists have been around for over 15 years. We've got almost 20 years of data on them. So they've been around. Now in different forms, Liraglutide and a few others have it's been researched for a while. It's not like they're brand new. The newness is FDA approval specifically for weight loss in people who aren't diabetic.
Right.
So just straight up, if weight loss, like obesity, weight loss, not secondary to diabetes. In the research, they were noticing people who are taking these for diabetes lost a ton of weight, and then that's what led into is it just for diabetes and weight loss, or do people without diabetes still experience weight loss? That obviously started happening in the research, and then that leads us to now where they're both forms are approved, and there's more in the pipeline. These are once weekly injections. There's orals, like tablets, are already being tested because a lot of people are like squirrely about needles that don't want to take a needle.
Needles make them drugs, right?
It's the closer it is to food, then it's less feeling like a drug. So there's more in the pipeline, and there's different mechanisms. The tirzepatide being a dual agonist versus semaglutide only binding to one receptor was a big difference. Different side effect profiles between the two of them affect people differently. So I guess you could say we're in the infancy of these things as far as understood as weight loss, just for weight loss versus type 2 diabetes.
Right.
And
so you've worked with like dozens of people now in your personal training who, previously close to hundreds of people without using weight loss drugs. And now you have clients who are also training, watching what they eat, and using weight loss drugs. So you've got the perspective of the last decade, which is just people training and eating properly. And now you have people who are training, eating, and using weight loss drugs. Not that you put them on the drugs, but that they went to the doctors, got the drugs, but are still training with you. So you've got to manage both. So big difference? What are we seeing?
Yeah, okay, that's a good point. Yeah, I train people. We've been training / coaching people for over 20 years, like starting in college, but then as as a professional, through all of our programs, and then taking on coaching clients directly. So yeah, I've seen people do it the old way, I guess, without them, or the way when those didn't exist and weren't a possibility.
Right.
I can't prescribe anything. I'm affiliated with a couple of clinics where if those clients are going to be prescribed those drugs for weight loss, I can still coach them.
Right.
And I just communicate with their prescribing practitioner, and I go back and forth with them on how their program should look. Obviously, their prescribing practitioner can't also be their, or isn't
daily
usually
trainers.
It's not like I'm in the gym with them, but I'm coaching them. Like I'm coaching them like consistently. Most people aren't going to get a prescribing physician or practitioner that's going to also follow up with them on a regular basis, and that's kind of one of the many angles to this. Is these drugs are gatekept by someone has to prescribe them. And that person isn't necessarily going to be following up. So, I mean, they're going to give them recommendations on what to do.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that they get as much follow-up as some of these people would hope for. Anyway, so those are the people that land on me, the ones that I'm working with. They show up with this. They're already on this stuff. I'm like, all right, let's see what we can do here. One of the main differences, or a very simple, basic thought, is the willpower or effort, mental effort it takes to push through a training program, but specifically the diet half, in order to push your weight, push down your body weight, like lose body fat.
Yeah,
that effort is lower. So if we're going to set the effort it takes to lose weight in the absence of any sort of pharmaceutical, if we're going to set that as a 10 out of 10 effort,
right?
It sounds like, or it seems like, either of these, like a semaglutide or tirzepatide, because I've worked with people who have used both. I've worked with people who've tried one, cleared out, tried the other.
Oh, cool.
It seems like that effort drops to like 4 or 5 out of 10.
So is it less hunger, less cravings, or both?
But less hunger, less cravings. You'll hear about this if you listen to podcasts or read Reddit threads or whatever. There's less food noise. Like they're not thinking about food all day long.
Food noise. Okay.
It's the chat.
So in your head, right?
Yeah, it's that like, oh, should I have that next snack? It's that evening moment where you're standing at the fridge with your hand on the fridge door, and you're like, am I gonna have that snack? But mentally, you already know I've eaten enough for today. Like it's not like you don't know that, but that's that. No, you're not
peckish. Yeah.
No, neither. I think you're bored, and you're. It's that poke. It's that poke at the reward center. It's like, oh, I need something, like just something. If you're just a lot of people, it's boredom eating. They're not eating because they're hungry. They're not eating. Yeah. They're just bored. Like they haven't engaged their mind in another way, and they're watching TV. I don't know. They're not otherwise preoccupied with something that's engaging enough that distracts them from just going to the fridge.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we all do it. We all do it to some degree anyways. So it lessens that mental burden to fight the food noise, fight the thoughts in your head. Like, oh yeah, I might go have something, another little snack. So it makes the process of losing weight a lot easier, but I don't think it's from a willpower standpoint, but I don't think it does it on its own.
So that's cool. So it's not like your old school thermogenics or metabolism boosters where you're kind of guessing how the hell this possibly caused weight loss. This is a purely you eat less on this drug, and eating less is easier on this drug. Would that be a fair way to describe it?
I think so. You can read about that, but that's what I'm getting feedback.
It's like a compliance booster as someone who works with people, right?
Yeah. Now you got to remember, I'm working with people who are like motivated, and they they actually exercise and they go to the gym. I don't work with anybody who doesn't go to the gym. So, or work out at home. Either way, they're working out one way or another.
Yeah.
Some of what you'll read about and hear about online is people who go on these drugs but don't ever exercise. I don't know that that's really going to get you too far.
Is that where the whole this stuff causes muscle loss rumor came from? Was just the fact that they were not training and eating less, just like, so they would lose muscle just like everyone else who eats less but doesn't train, that kind of thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. I mean, but so you and I know from previous research, anyone who loses weight, a significant amount of weight from caloric restriction is going to lose lean mass with or without a GLP-1 agonist.
Yeah.
Like lean mass is going to come down to some degree anyway. Like we know
not
that
necessarily skeletal muscle, but remember everything else is lean mass, right? So everything not fat. So if you're, so there's going to be some decrease. Even the food in your system and the water retention is lean mass, depending on how you measure it. So there's always going to be some loss. Yeah.
Right. And this gets into how you're measuring it. Even if you're using a DEXA, what does that actually measure? It technically, the lean mass portion of a DEXA is not exactly muscle. It's just everything that's not technically fat. And then they infer with some equations and calculations how much of that might be muscle. But the lean mass component of your body isn't just all muscle. So this controversy or I don't know if it's a controversy, but you will hear some people talking about, like there's a lot of the weight loss is lean mass loss, but you never hear those same people talking about how much lean mass is lost when you just do a hard caloric restriction diet anyways.
Yeah.
In both cases, you're going to lose some lean mass. The other thing no one discusses is people who are obese. I mean, BMI is pretty high. Who's to say they're not already carrying too much lean mass as per a measurement?
Right.
And when they start coming down in body fat and some of the lean mass measurement comes down, it's reasonable that they're arriving at a lean mass it's more appropriate for their size, especially if they're
not. I have
a
good story on that one for you.
Yeah,
do
go ahead.
you remember this is dating us, but the Biggest Loser study that came out on that old television show, The Biggest Loser? Mm-hmm. And they were talking about the lean mass loss and like the metabolic rate loss of the contestants because they lost so much weight. And I remember looking at this one contestant, he had lost like 25 pounds of lean body mass and his metabolic rate had dropped by like 30%. And then when I actually looked up the numbers, the guy was exactly my height, was still carrying like 20 pounds more lean mass than me. And his metabolic rate was still higher than we just measured ours. And I'm like, you kidding? He's still like, we're concerned about how much lean mass he has and he's still carrying more than, and this was a decade ago. So me in my 30s versus this guy had just lost. I'm like, fine. He has 30 more pounds lean mass to lose before he's my size. So yeah, it's that argument. You kind of forget that there's a lot of times people are starting from a really high level.
Yeah. Well, and I've not heard anyone discuss that yet, what is their lean mass as related to their height? Like no one in the example you just gave, no one would look at you saying you don't have enough lean mass.
Yeah. I need 30 more pounds. Crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So that guy that person that you're mentioning from The Biggest Loser could lose 30 more pounds of lean mass and still arrive where you are, which I think you have more than the average person's lean mass.
Yeah, it was a ridiculous amount. The guy had, and it was,
Yeah, so that's not even considered. Like what compared to what? Okay, so you came down, they might have lost some lean mass, but compared to what's appropriate for their height,
great word. What's appropriate?
What's
ideal?
And then and then compare that to a visual. So in your case, if we just put you as the standard of pretty well developed lean mass at your height, because you do a lot of weight training, and then you take the example of the person from The Biggest Loser who's lost a bunch of lean mass and still has way more measurable lean mass than you.
Yeah.
So are you undersized and they're appropriate sized? I would argue no. I would argue that you're appropriate sized for your height. So that's not even considered. So if you hear about this loss of lean mass, they're not even considering what's appropriate for the person's height or where they're starting from.
Right.
And compare it to losing weight without a GLP-1 receptor agonist, but lost the same amount of weight just from white knuckling it with caloric restriction. You're going to lose lean mass that way too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again,
time and time again.
And I keep saying lean mass, not muscle.
Yeah.
Lean mass as measured by whatever technique you're going to use, DEXA, BOD, POD, whatever. So you can't, none of these people are discussing direct measurements of muscle. They're talking about lean mass. And again, that's a whole different discussion on all the different ways
coming up, actually. Yeah.
Oh, yes, it is. Yeah. Of all the different ways to measure it. But anyways, the point being if you lift weights, that's completely ameliorated. There is no lean mass. There is no loss of lean mass. I work with people. I work with multiple people who we've been tracking their body composition. Now, again, DEXA it's not perfect, but it's the one we use.
Best you can do right now. Yeah.
Yeah. And I have clients who've lost an appreciable amount of fat mass and haven't lost any lean mass. So it's not, and these are people who I've worked with previously and got them in, how would you call it? Photo shoot ready shape.
Yeah.
And they're a decade later re-arriving at that shape.
That's awesome.
With the aid of a GLP-1 agonist and a receptor agonist. And nothing's changed as far as their DEXA scan. So relatively speaking, they're arriving at a similar condition, a similar lean body mass. Again, they're weight training. They can't do it without weight training. That's a huge caveat here. Paying attention to their protein. And this time around, it's just less mental stress to get it done.
Right.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So now with that said, we are talking about a group of people who have a weight training habit built in. That's something that's part of them that's not new.
Right.
They're not starting from scratch. They're not building that concept right now and fumbling through the beginnings of weight training. These are people who are well-trained, know what they're doing, easy for them to ramp up their volume if they need to, easy to push it on a weight training program or just continue whatever they were doing.
And they're motivated, right? Because let's be honest, you're not cheap. So they're financially motivated also to make this work. They've dedicated themselves to this process.
Yeah. Well, they're ready to actually push. Yeah. And many of them, some of these are people I've trained before. Some of these are new clients, but either way, they're all people who've taken a shot at this before.
Yes.
Like they know what it feels like. They know what it feels like to actually lose weight, and they know how much effort that felt like. I mean, you and I know what it feels like. It sucks. Like it's a lot of effort.
Yeah.
So
I'd stay lean because I don't want to have to diet again. That's how much it sucks. Yeah.
Yeah. And to hear people say like, oh, this is like, that was a 10 out of 10. This is like a 4 out of 10.
That's amazing. Yeah.
But they didn't say 0. It's still something. It's not 0.
Magic. It's not a magic pill in that regard. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it takes effort, but these are people who have a reference point of what the effort was. So
yeah,
this gets into some of what you'll hear about with people who have heard about this stuff, got it prescribed, started, and a month later they're like, well, nothing's happening. I just my gut hurts and, I feel nauseous, and they have all these problematic side effects, but nothing's happening.
Oh yeah. Hey, on all of the drugs, looking at the names here, do you ramp up slowly with all of them? Like a small dose and then, okay.
That's what you're supposed to do. Yeah. You're supposed to ramp up slowly. Like, I don't know what everyone's doing, but that's the standard. That's the standard. You're supposed to ramp up. Like in a little
pamphlet that comes with the drug.
Yeah. You're supposed to ramp up one. You're supposed to ramp up, I think both of them, semaglutide and tirzepatide, you ramp. There's 4 titrations, I think, for both.
Okay.
So it takes you basically 4 months to get to the actual working dose.
Wow.
Maybe tirzepatide's 3.
So you do have to be patient at the beginning phase, right?
Yeah, I think it's 4 for both. But I'm getting a little unsure about it because a lot of people I work with never get to the top dose. They kind of stop halfway.
Because they're getting results already, or because they're tired of it?
Results. Results. Nice. The cross section of results and side effect. They've managed. So you're trying to find a
sweet spot where you're still kind of making weight loss easier, but it's not. Is it the stomach mostly that people are complaining about? Like lethargy?
So
tired?
Yeah, the research shows, and if you have the patience for it, if you wait it out, they should subside. A lot of it is the gastrointestinal side effects. It's this. A lot of people in the first 24 hours after their shot feel nauseated, like they want to barf.
Okay, but it's only like the first little bit, right?
Well, you don't. depends.
After the shot. Sorry.
Some people actually barf, but
sucks.
the results are happening. So they're like the results so much, they just put up with it. And I was like, okay, you're nuts. Like if that's now, I don't have anyone I've trained like that, but I've heard I know a couple of people whose family members, that's how they report it, but they're like, but it's working so well. She just puts up with it. I'm like, all right, that's her choice. So I wouldn't do that, but then I checked in a couple months later and I'm like, hey, is that still happening? She's like, oh no, she doesn't. No, like
let's get used to it.
She feels a little nauseated, but she doesn't actually barf anymore. So I think it lasted maybe 4 or 5 weeks. So now for most people, vomiting is one of the worst possible feelings you can have. And that would scare a lot.
Yeah.
Can you think of something? No way. That's one of the worst feelings. So if you knew you were going to induce that with a drug once a week and you're like, but it's worth it. Like
I'm so bad at it too. I'm always like, I'm that guy who is like, I'm going to crack a rib, right? I'm going to blow out an eyeball. That's how
bust all the blood vessels in your face and everything.
Yeah. Like some people can just go with it. I fight it the entire way. Yeah.
And you're going to feel better on the other side, but
doesn't matter.
It's so bad when you go through. Anyways, so we all know how bad that feels. And yet the results for some people are good enough that they even put up with that feeling, but it subsides. Now that's an extreme side effect. I mean, there's the other side effect, but that's one of the more extreme, I guess you could say, gastrointestinal side effects of actually bringing it up versus feeling nauseated is gross too. And then finally actually bringing it up. So, so that's one of the things that obviously if you're using one of these things, you got to tell your doctor, like, this is what you're experiencing. But in the data suggests that even those more extreme side effects do subside. And that's the whole point of the titration of going. So when I say titration, I mean, you start at a low dose,
ramping up. Yeah.
Next month, you go to the next dose up So 4 months later, you're at the clinical dose that they even talk about in the research. None of those lower doses on the way up are technically the dose that any of the data is talking about. So if you just park it at one of the lower doses, like many people I'm working with that never even get to the top dose, they're like, I'm doing so well now. And then they talk to their provider, and their provider's like, fine, just leave it at that. Not to mention the cost keeps going up as your dose goes up.
Okay, so I have a 2-part question for you. You ready? I was looking, and someone can check my math on this, but I was looking at the amount of prescriptions that have been filled in Canada. And I'm assuming it's 1 prescription per person. Like no one has 13 prescriptions, right? If you discount everyone under 18 and everyone over 75, it works out to somewhere between like 10 and 14% of Canada is on a weight loss drug right now, which is crazy. So my 2-part question is, what do you think that's going to do to the health and fitness industry? And the question everybody wants to know is it cheating? Go.
Health and fitness industry. Well, I guess if I'm a tiny, tiny, tiny little example, you just got to learn how to work with people who are using a GLP-1 receptor agonist or the combo.
Right.
So, which I would argue it's the only extra step here really is taking into account those various side effects and, and I guess the regular communication, or getting information back and forth from their physician on how they're doing, but they're going to, that's their communication. If their physician thinks something's really going wrong, they're going to stop. So it's not like it
doesn't replace diet and exercise.
No. And the client who's using it, I can't tell them what to do with it. It's up to them. So they're going to have to report into me if they're going to continue or not. Like a significant amount of people, get fed up with the side effects, and the amount of weight they're losing is not worth it for the side effects. So
they're still expecting the 10 pounds a week instant, instant beach body. Yeah.
Yeah. It's even if it is helping them lose weight, if they feel kind of gross for like a significant portion of the week. I mean, constipation's a big one. Like a lot of people get constipated, and I mean, so you gotta drink a lot of water. You gotta do fiber supplements, different sort of supplements to help with that. So it's not a straight line. You just take it and all this, like how people are hearing about, like it's a magic
Miracle.
bullet. It really, really works for people who really need it. But that's, how do we say this? There's different categories of people here. There's people who are like have a lot of weight to lose, very high BMI, a lot of weight to lose, and don't have an exercise habit. If they don't already have diabetes, they're on their way.
Right.
And obviously a lot of it, they don't arrive here unless everything else they've tried didn't work. So
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
That's one category of people. I don't really see those people. So when I'm talking about the people I'm working with, they're not in that sort of dire straits, so to speak.
Right.
I don't normally work with people who are diabetic either. It's somewhere they could be on the cusp of overweight or obese, but they're like normal blood sugar, like they have normal blood sugar control. They're not metabolic syndrome. Some of them are, but in most cases, it's not. I'm not dealing with necessarily extreme cases, but that doesn't mean they don't have 50 or 60 pounds to lose, depending on where they're starting. So there's still a significant way to go. And so it's just for the diet and fitness industry, for that part of the question, you're just going to have to learn how to incorporate them.
So it's going to change our industry, but not erase it, is your opinion?
It's just a new thing that's going to be a part of it.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah. Okay. And just managing how to use, like, people, like I'm talking to clients who are like, wow, this is so much easier dieting this way. Huh. And then they're like, but what happens later? What happens next? We always talk about
what happens next. It's a key thing.
Right. Yep. No one wants to stay on them if they don't have to.
No one likes the idea of being on it forever. Everyone I talk to, that's the thing. It's like, well, do you have to be on it forever? I'm like,
no. So my thought there, and again, this is new. Like, I haven't worked with anyone that we've been through a couple of years and I've seen them completely on the other side yet. So I'm kind of feeling my way through the dark room right now with them. So the best I can tell is you got to take the opportunity while this is requiring less willpower or less brain power. This is the time to take the opportunity to reset your habits.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, if you don't reset your habits, find like a new system. Mm-hmm. If and when you ever go off of any of these sort of things, that you have to have that habit ingrained. Because if any of that food noise comes back, the chatter comes back, any of that desire comes back, you better have got as many things and on your side. You better have stacked the deck in your favor as much as you can while that food noise is quieting or quieted. That if and when it does come back, and this research suggests people will gain a lot of the weight back. I don't know if they're going to gain all of it back. I don't think we've had enough people go through it all and come out the other side to know. Yeah. And also to know is that regain for people who have all different BMIs, all different blood glucose control levels. Like, are we talking about full-on diabetics? Are we talking about metabolic syndrome? Or are we talking about people who are healthy obese? Right. So there's all these different levels of, are we talking about people who have an exercise habit? Are we talking about people who don't? So you can't just say, oh, when you come off tirzepatide or you come off semaglutide, this is exactly what's going to happen. It's like in what group? In people who have an exercise habit, in people who have type 2 diabetes, in people who have some of the measurements of metabolic syndrome, in people who are healthy obese, in people who live in a household where everyone's against them.
Yeah.
So, and this gets to the fairness thing.
Yeah. It's also the same argument everyone makes with diet. So when you stop dieting, you just gain the weight back. And you're like, well, when you stop walking, you stop moving forward. I don't know what else to tell you, right? Like it's, yeah. So, but yeah, to the fairness is the big issue here, right?
Yeah. And I've listened to a few call-in radio shows, and I've actually had a few people say this to me, is they were shamed when they were overweight for being overweight or obese. Now they're getting shamed for losing weight the wrong way, or the lazy way, or the cheater way.
Right.
And in their view, people don't want them either way.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to give you my one opinion on this, only because I just recently had this conversation. Suggesting that taking weight loss drugs is cheating then also suggests we were in some sort of competition. Right? Yeah.
Exactly. And this gets to the root of all of this. I think this is like a underlying deep-seated genetic mate preference choice human thing about competition. And the idea that you're doing something that makes you more favorable as a person by the halo effect of, like, we all know this, like people who are in really good shape and present themselves well, just we inadvertently give them the benefit of the doubt. Like, we know this.
Life is easier when you're beautiful. Always,
yes,
right?
yes. And if you're doing something that gets you in better shape and the other person isn't, they're looking back at you saying, wait a minute, that's not fair. You're getting one over on me. You're getting one over on me as in the milieu of all human beings. It's not fair that you're passing me now because now you're in better shape than me. So it's this fairness thing.
And you're doing it in a way that you're not suffering as much. Or as much as I would like you to, I guess. Like, how does that? Yeah.
Oh, that's the other gross thing. It's they'll accept you if you white knuckle it and do it the right way, whatever that means.
Yes.
But if you have any pharmacy, and again, supplements don't count there. You can take a supplement. But if you take something that's pharmaceutical, all of a sudden you're doing it the wrong way.
Interesting. Yeah.
And
it's a really weird phenomenon, right? Where it's just cheating. And then depending on the person you're talking to, it's like, well, they should just be exercising or dieting, or just not trying. It's, what's weird too is the suggestion they're just not trying hard enough, or have it as if everyone hasn't tried to lose weight at some point and just weren't successful at it, right? Like the suggestion is almost like they weren't aware diet and exercise is also an option. It's like, of course they know that.
Well, it's the assumption that they're just lazy. They don't try hard enough. It's a character assassination. They aren't a good person for not being able to do it the quote unquote right way.
Yeah.
And
it's stuck on, we know we either have to accept that obesity comes with increased risk of disease, and thus treating obesity in whatever way possible lowers that risk, or we just pretend this is just purely a cosmetic competition thing. And it aggravates me that we tend to lean that way and be like, whatever, they should just lose weight the hard way. And you're thinking, yeah, but these are your friends, and this drug that's helping them lose weight could also help them, preventing them from being diabetic. It has effects on cardiovascular disease. They've had effects on liver health. Even they're looking at it for alcoholism now, right? So it's weird. You take a drug that lowers their body fat levels to a more normal range for their body, which thus decreases risk of really severe diseases. But the main concern is whether or not they're cheating while doing it. It's mind blowing.
No one even cares if it makes you healthier. It's just if it makes you look better. They're pissed off, or they get it. It rattles them if it makes you look better, because that's where they're going to get one over on you, like overtly. Like,
so they wouldn't care if it had all the health benefits, but no weight loss. They wouldn't be an issue.
No, because they don't give a shit if you're taking a statin for your cholesterol. They don't care if you're taking metformin for diabetes, something for diabetes. No one shames you for taking a drug for your diabetes or for your cholesterol. But the minute the thing you take makes you look better, and socially you'll get the attention in a room instead of them, all of a sudden that's not fair.
Okay, so there's one last question for you, because I think we've done really well here.
Yeah.
But I've heard the term used, and I have an opinion on it. So I want to see what yours is. That it's great and all, but should not be used for vanity weight loss. So what the hell is vanity weight loss? What's your take on that? Because I want to hear yours.
Yeah, I've heard a few podcasters and, I don't know, various people mention that. So this is purely a judgment on how much weight there is to lose as per the clinical definition of obesity versus not. And are you in what a physician would deem necessary category to take this stuff? So if the weight loss is, like, again, this is all subjective. In their opinion, oh, you look okay. You don't need to lose 20 more pounds. You look fine as you are. That's their opinion of your amount of weight loss. That's not worth it. But if you're big enough or have enough weight to lose, that whoever this person who's calling it vanity weight loss is like, okay, no, but now you have a clinical issue. Now that amount of weight loss is okay. And you know what no one ever talks about? So if you are in that category, so you have your BMI is high enough, your blood, whatever it is that your physician's like, yeah, you you're approved to be on this. I will prescribe it. I'll monitor you. What happens when you lose just enough weight that you're just below the obese BMI? Do they just stop you? Or are you allowed to go all the way to where you actually like the way you look?
Which will actually make you feel better as a person and wake up and be like, good job, me. Yeah.
Well, it's not like I've never heard of anyone getting just below the obese category on the BMI and the physician's like, okay, now you can come off. No, everyone just goes all the way to when they like the way they look.
Yeah.
So,
and liking the way you look is massive. It is so, we don't like to talk about it, but it's such an underrated part of all of this health and fitness stuff is to wake up and be like, yeah, that's pretty good. Right. It affects how you view yourself. And then the way you view yourself affects how other people view you. It's just sort of cascading of events. But I guess it really doesn't matter if you're helped to drop from 60% fat to 40% body fat, then are told to get off. And you're like, yeah, but I still hate myself. I don't know what to tell you here. So yeah, I find the whole take on vanity weight loss just being my personal opinion on how lean you should be, given not really knowing you, but just relative to me, most likely is what I'm thinking.
Well, it's the idea that you're using this prescription and you weren't in any sort of you didn't have a physiological problem other than you just didn't like the way how much weight you had on, so you wanted to take some off. But
that gets back to our point that like if we know that excess weight increases your risk of disease, and that excess is is probably a higher BMI. But what if I'm trending that way and I use a weight loss drug to kind of get back down? I'm still kind of helping my health. So it's an odd one next. Your point, what happens next, right? So I'm slowly been creeping up over the decades and I'm right at the border. Shouldn't I stop the problem instead of waiting to get the problem and then fixing it? Preventative medicine. Yeah.
So it's just a scale. It's like, okay, most people will I get practitioners and people, the fairness thing, they'll accept that you take this stuff if you have full-blown diabetes and high lipids, and you're at all kinds of risks of metabolic syndrome, diabetes, and cardiovascular. Then it's okay. Yeah. And then if you actually end up losing weight and looking any better, well, okay, fine. Like that's just the side effect. But if you haven't made it all the way to those measurable diseases, but you'd like to not get there, well, then now it's vanity. Now you're just, no, it's not like you don't deserve it. You shouldn't have it. That's not fair. So there's this fairness thing. There's a crabs in a bucket thing.
Yeah. Great term. Yeah.
If you're trying to get ahead of this concept and the thing is struggling with your weight, it's interesting. You don't have to necessarily gain a lot of weight to struggle with it. If you're just exerting a ton of mental effort to try to keep yourself in a body weight range that doesn't lead you towards diabetes, and you tend to gain, then you fight a bit to get some off, and then you gain again, and just over the years, it's this battle between yourself, and the older you get, the harder that kind of gets, and you take a GLP-1 receptor agonist or the dual one, tirzepatide to semaglutide, and it makes knocking 20, 25 pounds off like a lot easier, and you were just going to white knuckle it anyways. But in both cases, just spending less of your total years overweight or obese is still healthier.
Good point.
So the argument is that fair, right, or safe to do it versus waiting till you have clinical diabetes and a dangerous level of lipids, not dangerous, a much higher risk profile on your lipids, and then finally you take the drug.
So it's funny, you commonly read in research that, the best way to defeat obesity is preventative, never become obese in the first place. Right. And it's said in such a moral high grain, it drives me nuts. And then you finally have a drug that can accomplish that. And they're like, well, you shouldn't take that until you really need it. And you're like, well,
right. Yeah. So it's again, it's the fairness thing. It's the crabs in a bucket where the one crab trying to get out of the bucket is trying to do something for itself against the grain, and all the other crabs pull it back down.
Which is actually a thing that happens. Crabs do actually.
Yeah, it actually happens. Yeah. So the analogy, basically, if everyone else feels like you're straying from the pack and they can't quite the problem is it makes people reflect on themselves too. First of all, they're looking at you going, oh, you're doing that? Well, I'm kind of in the same shape as them. Should I be doing it? So it forces them to reevaluate you in relation to themselves. Then it forces them to look at themselves in the mirror and decide, oh, maybe I'm supposed to be doing something about this. So,
because in the counter argument that you're going to get, and I know we're going to get it from, certain physicians, et cetera, is like, yeah, but it's about assessment of risk versus benefit. And I find that interesting because what they're saying is at a certain weight, since you're currently not at a super high risk for many diseases, even though it's individual, the risk of the side effects of these drugs, I just don't, I am telling you that it's not worth it. And you're sitting there going, yeah, but okay, well, I drink a lot. So from my point of view, the risk is lower than my current lifestyle, right? Or I smoke. I don't do either, right? So it's funny because I commonly think about when people talk about, yeah, but it's a risk to benefit ratio. And I'm like, but that's kind of a personal choice, right? Like, because some people do insanely risky stuff.
Yeah. Not the way our healthcare systems are constructed.
No, it's healthcare is like, well, since I'm now in charge of everyone's health, especially in Canada, I decide what the risk is for you. And you're I do insanely risky stuff all year, every day, all day. And but not with this, right?
So the prescribing physician is the gatekeeper to this sort of drug, and they're going to impose their thought of what the risk reward is on you. Yet you can live your life. You can drink yourself into oblivion. You can eat yourself to cardiovascular disease and diabetes.
Allowed to smoke.
You can smoke your way to lung cancer.
Yeah,
they can't gatekeep any of that.
Canada, so people are stoned here constantly, right? So,
you can. Yep. So you can be stoned, drunk, eat your way to diabetes and heart disease.
One of the major pharma companies has just launched again, I'm going to say Lilly Direct, like an online portal, and they're like, screw it, you can just get it right from us. And they're trying to cut out the middleman now. So that'll be an interesting play because obviously doctors are going to hate, the medical system's going to hate that. But more importantly, the other pharma companies are going to be like, well, okay, if you're doing it, I'm doing it because I want that profit too. So that'll be an interesting next couple of years as they all try to go kind of online direct.
Yeah, I mean, people see the results that other people they know are getting, and they want to see that. Doctors usually have the good intentions, but within the system they're confined to.
Yes, that's very true.
And they're not trying to make things worse for you. They usually, generally, from all the physicians I've ever talked to, they don't want to prescribe something if they don't have to. Yeah. They'd rather not introduce another variable. And drugs are powerful. The reason a drug makes it to the point of being an actual drug on the market because it does something.
It actually works.
The ones that don't do anything never get to the market. So if they have a real effect, which they all usually have they all have a side effect that goes with the real effect.
To have an effect, you also have some effects that you don't like. There's always
some kind of side effect. So they are technically looking out for your best interest.
Right.
But there's
don't know what the next 10 or 20 years looks like. We got like a decade from now.
Right. We got 20 years of data on this stuff so far. But again, we all, in the last few years, we all ended up doing something with zero long-term data. So I'd say 20 is pretty good so far. But again, we don't know. But they're still generally looking out for you. Doctors don't just fill you full of drugs. But at the same time, they're imposing their opinion on what is appropriate for you, or where, should I take this? Should I not take this? Like, well, I'll tell you. Yeah. And in this case, this concept of preventative, the idea of like, well, I don't have diabetes yet. I don't have like high cholesterol. I don't have, but I'm heavy enough or I'm big enough that I really don't like the way I look.
Yes.
And for some reason, you can't change the shape and look of your body with anything other than white knuckle it. With that's not fair if you use anything to help with that. Yet, to your point, overweight and obesity is a risk for just about every disease we can think of. And we're told to control that and get ahead of it. Yet the one thing that has arrived on the market that can really help with that, we're being told it's not for you.
Yeah. So a great example would be if I was overweight and then I lost a bunch of weight. And you're like, oh, Brad, you look great. What did you do? And I say, why, thank you, John. I took weight loss drugs. You might be like, oh, you cheater. Or I say, oh, thank you, I went on an extreme diet. You might be like, that's not good for you. But if I told you, dude, thanks, I actually took up tennis, you'd be like, oh, good for you. Right? Like it's so the process seems to matter in our opinion of whether or not you did a good thing.
Yeah, it's something to do with getting one. Again, I think it's getting one over on people socially. Mm-hmm. Like it's not fair that you've moved ahead of me in the social hierarchy of who looks better.
Getting results too easily. And then the funny thing is your immediate reaction, if I got results in a way you think was too easy, is the hard part comes later when you're like, oh, well, you don't know what the long-term complications are going to be. So you're just threatening me with the hard part later.
They got to knock you down one way or another because they don't like the fact that you changed. If you never changed, if you never changed, if it didn't, and again, it's partly because of how you look. If you don't look better, they won't care. Like if you take a drug, like I said, that improves your cholesterol and your blood sugar management, but you don't look any different, well, you haven't got one over on them socially. So they don't care. The minute it changes your look, and then they have to think about themselves in relation to you, then all of a sudden they are going to have many people will have an issue with it.
Yeah.
The thing is, this idea that drugs is like the cheater way. Again, I'm super biased. When I first started working out in high school, everyone, I mean, again, I trained with bodybuilders who were on steroids to get big and used all kinds of way more side effecty, way riskier drugs to strip off all the body fat. Yeah. So to me, that was, I just assumed, oh, that's how you do it. Like that's how you do it. Everyone in front of you.
What you guys don't know is that a lot of those Instagram models you look at are abusing like thyroid medications to look like that. Like, so it's not like everyone else is using safe alternatives. You'd be, without really naming names, I'm just gonna say that a fair amount of the people you're looking at going like, oh, wow, he or she got in good shape, also use drugs, just not FDA approved weight loss drugs.
Right. Like these are ones that are actually approved for weight loss. We know that people would use super powerful things. I mean, that were never meant for weight loss. They're just so powerful that they end up causing weight loss.
Yep.
So, for people who are, for any of the clients that I work with who are facing that criticism, this is a little bit of work you have to do on yourself. And this is for you. It's not about them. And you have to understand that any criticism you're facing is you changing your body. And this is with or without. This happens when people diet and get in shape with or without a drug. The fact that you're changing your body forces them to face themselves and make a decision. Why are they doing that? Like, this is how myopic people are and how me they are about this. Your weight loss starts making me feel different about myself. You're either getting one over on me, you're passing me, you're leaving me behind. Like I've had people whose spouses are like, think they're cheating on them because they're just getting in shape. Wow. And like, well, who are you getting in shape for? It's like, me, you idiot. Not you or anyone else. Me. People can't even get to the idea that you're doing this for yourself. Mm-hmm. Because you want to feel better about yourself. And part of that is how you look and feel. Yeah. So you've got to remember any criticism thrown your way when your body changes, and specifically when your body changes in a direction where you would say it looks better, it's challenging them to think about themselves. And you're poking at all of their insecurities. And that comes out as an attack on you. So
we can sum it up by saying, if you have been made aware of all the possible side effects and still want to take these drugs, and in doing so, you lose weight that makes you feel better about yourself, then we're cool with it. It's not cheating, in our opinion, and it's just another tool for you to use as long as you're aware that there's some side effects, and we don't know 20 years down the line what the long-term effects are. Mm-hmm. But if it makes you feel better about yourself and you're educated enough to make that decision, then have at it. But it's not going to replace diet and exercise. It's an adjunct to it. Would that be fair?
Exactly. That adjunct is the most important part. Yeah. Because if you just take them and you just continue eating just like lousy food, you're just going to feel even worse, because that part of the effect is a slowing of gastric emptying. That food just sits there longer. So
an entire bag of fuzzy peaches is going to feel pretty gross.
Yeah. Like imagine how, like, you know how bad it feels like 5 minutes after you eat a fast food meal. Like it tastes good just in the moment. And then afterwards you're like, oh, what did I do that for? Now just extend that feeling for hours. So So you got to build that. It is a useful tool to really hone in the habit while that food noise is dampened down. But
it's like a teaching aid almost then. Yeah.
Teaching it greases the wheels to make it easier.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
But you can't rely on it as the sole thing to do the work, and it's not going to do it long term. So nice. I mean, it's put it this way: they're here to stay. There's only more of them going to be coming out.
Yeah.
Access is going to keep. We're going to have more and more access.
Yeah.
Costs will start coming down. I mean, they're expensive. These things are expensive.
But they're going to try to get that cost down. They're going to be a pill or inhaler soon.
Yeah, they don't always have to be injectables. They're going to be less invasive.
Like yeah. That's so funny.
Yeah, like gummy bears. There's going to be less invasive ways to take them. So they're here to stay now. And the more people use them, the more safety profile data we're going to have, and the more side effect profile, everything. They're here to stay now.
So then the best way to deal with criticism is just like eat, stop, eat, and fasting is it's none of their business. You don't have to bring it up. Really?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like it's none of anyone else's business. So it doesn't have to be brought up in conversation. And you're not owed to give them that info. So if there's a giant conversation at a dinner table around weight loss drugs and you happen to be on one, you don't have to feel like you have to weigh in on this. It's none of their business.
Yeah, you can, if you want to, pick your spots and know who you're talking to. If that person, you probably have a good idea who you can share that information with without getting attacked. But once in a while, you'd be surprised at who the person is who's not on your side.
Yeah, it's crazy too, right? Yeah,
got to really think about that. Oh yeah, I've had random people in the gym turn out to be their biggest champions. Yep. And this is years ago. Nothing to do with the weight loss drugs. And they're a family member or a spouse becomes their biggest critic because it's causing that person to feel very insecure about themselves watching you quote unquote improve or pass them or whatever the word is.
You have stories about like it would be husbands or wives literally trying to feed the one who's losing weight. Like it get all of a sudden like you've never baked a muffin in your life and now I'm coming home to trays of it, right? What's going on? And it was trying to keep us at the same level. Or usually it's because I normally had a little bit on you on this one and now you're passing me. So I still want that. Right. So
which one of the two of us is the one who's quote more in shape? And then all of a sudden,
if anyone wants to bake me muffins, that's cool. I'm good with it.
Yeah. But then your effort forces them to realize, oh, if you keep going, I'm going to be the one who's like I'm not as in good shape as you are between the two of us. Like, that's not fair. Cause now they got to like, do I have to do something now? So it's, I guess we got to wrap this up here. There's so much more to talk about on this topic. And again, we didn't get into a lot of specifics of metabolism, all that.
I just wanted that top level, your opinion on it based on your experiences. So that was really good.
Yeah. It definitely helps, but if you're not getting enough protein in and you're not doing weight training, it's definitely going to be, underwhelming. It's not going to do what you think it's going to do if you aren't doing all of those other things.
And it's not magic. Like don't expect just to wake up with Hollywood abs.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, okay.
And so but if you already have those habits built in, you're going to get a lot out of it. It's going to really help you accelerate your results. From what I've seen, comparing literally the same people from before and now use it, and their motivation is higher too, because it's just, they realize, oh man, I'm going to really be able to move forward here.
Yeah. It's kind of like when you're writing and get into a flow, right? You just got to keep going with it.
Kind of. Yeah. So, I guess, that's the best we can come up with for now, as far as a high level topic on this.
Yeah, if new info comes out, we'll for sure do more podcasts on this, because it's a good topic that's not going away. So
there's always going to be more info on it. So
yeah.
But I think we can leave it there for now. Obviously, cool. Questions, comments, we'll we'll be happy to keep talking about this.
Experiences too, if you've been on it, and I'd love to hear how it's going.
Yeah. I mean, that's the more feedback, the better, because again, this is the new world.
Remember the rule too. If someone's commenting on this, don't be a jerk, right? We're just getting info, so you don't have to take anybody down a notch.
Yep. All right.
Beauty.
So for Brad Peelan, I'm John Barber, and that's your Phi Life podcast.